Welcome, Wiggly Leaders. My name's Jim Anderson, and I'm one of the executive coaches who will be introducing you to this TLC 360 profile overview, and also will be supporting with some of the one-on-one debrief sessions that you'll be going through to better understand your results, and also to select some development focus areas to improve your effectiveness going forward. I'm really appreciative of this opportunity and would like to just get started with a brief overview of the 360 framework and the process that we'll be going through together. First, let's take a look at some outcomes that we hope to accomplish in this process. And the first is to really acknowledge your strengths. And we want to make sure that you're aware both of the strengths that have really been foundational for your success up until now. And then as we pick development focus areas, we want to make sure that they build upon those strengths and work with them. Second, we're going to be focusing your development on growing creative competencies that will further enhance your effectiveness, especially in your role as leader. We're going to be highlighting blind spots, things that you might be doing that are having an impact that you're not even aware of. We're going to be raising self-awareness, allowing you to be more aware, and through the awareness then, make new choices to improve behavior and effectiveness as well. Third, we want to help you see the cause-effect link between the state of mind you're in and beliefs that you might be holding subconsciously and various leadership behaviors that impact your effectiveness. Finally, in the process, we want to honor anonymity and confidentiality. And the way we do that is when you get your results, all of the data remains anonymous. And you're going to be the only one who sees your results other than the leadership coach who is assigned to do the debrief with you. You're free to share your results with anyone in the organization that you'd like to, but it's not a requirement. The way we're going to manage the accountability is rather than have you feel like you have to share your results, what we really want you to be doing is sharing your development focus areas that come out of the learning we have as we debrief these results. So those results can remain confidential just between you and your coach. If you choose to share them more openly, given that some of the other leaders in your organization have been through this, you're more than welcome to do that, but it's not required. And then the anonymity piece is we really protect the anonymous nature of the feedback that you received as much as possible. The one exception to that is with the boss's boss and the boss scores. Those will stand out, and you'll be able to see how your boss's boss and boss line up in their scores compared to your own self scores. We think those are really important relationships, and it's important for you to be on the same page. And so that's why in those cases you'll be able to see a direct line of sight to those scores. Next, I want to just give you an orientation of this overview that we're going to go through. First thing that we're going to do is give you an orientation to the 360 framework. Second, we're going to provide guidance on how to look at your results and prepare for your one-on-one coaching session. And then third, as we really move through a deeper understanding of what the results are inviting you to notice, we're going to help you identify 2 development focus areas that give you the greatest leverage to improve yourself going forward. And out of the coaching session, you'll end up with clarity around the 2 development focus areas, and you'll be going into the November Wiggly meeting where Craig will guide you in an action planning process to bring those development focus areas to life. Next, what I'd like to do is just show you the circle graph. And this is kind of the framework that the TLC 360 uses to graphically depict your results. And as you can see, it's a big circle chart. There's an inside circle and an outside circle. The inside circle basically identifies the categories that we're evaluating, and the outside circle identifies the specific competencies or tendencies that make up each category. And as you can see, if you cut this circle in half from left to right, there's a top half and a bottom half. The bottom half reflects reactive tendencies, and reactive tendencies are behaviors that oftentimes come out of a reactive state of mind, and most of the time limit your effectiveness when you're in your role as leader. The primary way that these end up eroding your effectiveness as leader is when they're overused either too frequently or they're overused in terms of too severely or too harshly. Um, all of the reactive tendencies also have a gift side to them, that they're basically tools in your toolbox of leadership. And when you use them in the right time, in the right place, they can actually be really effective. But it's when we get into overuse that it starts to erode effectiveness. On the top half, we're looking at creative competencies that enhance your effectiveness as a leader. The more that you engage in these, the more effective we tend to see not only you are in your leadership, but the more effective the results you get uh, with your team and the organization or part of the organization that you're working in. Also wanted to highlight that there are shaded areas and then dark lines in each segment, whether it's a category on the inside circle or the specific competencies and tendencies on the outside circle. The shaded area is representative of the overall average of everyone who gave you feedback on your survey. And then the dark reddish brown colored lines are your self survey or your self score. And what we're trying to do here is allow you to be able to look at this circle and get a quick glimpse of how do you see yourself and how are other people experiencing you. And so you can see in some cases the dark line is almost identical to the shaded area. And then there are other cases where there's a significant gap of white space between the shaded area and the dark line. When you're looking at differences between self score and other scores, I tend to say it's worth examining any gaps that are 20 to 25 percentile points or more. If that gap is bigger than 20 or 25 percentile points, it's worth taking a look at because there's a potential of a blind spot in terms of self awareness. And then what I'd like to do is advance to the next slide and just highlight again the bottom half are reactive tendencies that, when overused, limit your effectiveness. And the three categories at the center circle of the reactive bottom half are controlling, protecting, and complying. And then on the outside edge, you can see each of those categories have specific tendencies that, when you apply them and overuse them, again, limit your effectiveness. On the top side, again, I just want to reemphasize these are creative competencies. When you engage in these, you're liberating your creative potential, and it really enhances your effectiveness as a leader. On the top, there are 5 different categories: relating, authenticity, achieving, self awareness, and systems awareness. And again, those are the categories you'll see on the inside circle. And then if you go to the outside circle, you'll see the list in each of these columns of the actual competencies that make up that category. As we go back to the circle again, I just wanted to highlight that on the top half and the bottom half, you'll see all of the scales are from 0 to 100. When you took the survey, all the scores were on a 5-point raw score scale of 1 to 5. All of the raw scores from the feedback people gave you and from your self scores were loaded into a database with everyone who's ever taken this profile before. And that's how we arrive at a percentile. Your raw data is put into the system with, it's over 70,000 people now who have been through this, and your raw score comes up with a percentile of where you are in the pool of everyone who's ever taken it. And so when you're looking at these scores, you're seeing that they are percentile scores. Now, I also wanted to highlight that on the top half in the creative competencies, the higher the score, the more creative you're being, and the more likely that behavior is resulting in your effectiveness. So on the top half of the chart, your objective is to continue to grow those scores. So the higher the score, the more creative you are, the more likely it translates to effectiveness in your leadership role. On the bottom half, it's the inverse. On the bottom half, we're looking at reactive tendencies that, when overused, erode effectiveness. So on the bottom, the higher the score, the more it's likely that you're overusing that and it's eroding your effectiveness. So we just wanted to highlight that difference so that you're aware of it. Next, I want to just look at the results and reports that you received. When you got your results, basically we have the 11 by 17 chart, which is the circle graph, and it's the graphic depiction of your results that we just reviewed. Second, you got about a 15-page detailed report that breaks down all of the statistics and also has some written comments at the back of it. And then there's a 3-ring binder with an interpretation manual, and that's to allow you to more deeply understand some of the various competencies and tendencies and categories. And then finally, we're going to be sending you today in an email an individual results debrief tool. It's a 1-page Word document with 4 questions that you can use to guide you in preparing for your one-on-one coaching session. In the detailed report, you'll see that it breaks things down in a much more detailed way. And you can say in this case it's Bill Smith, and this is just a make-believe profile that we're using to help get you oriented. But you can say in this case we're looking at the creative relating dimension, which is in the top left of the circle. And then below that, you see all 5 of the creative competencies that make up relating. That is caring connection, fosters team play, collaborator, mentoring and developing, and interpersonal intelligence. In addition to that, you'll see that we list your self-score, so we show what your scores were for each of those, and you see we're showing the percentile and the raw scores. Next, the evals column are the total average of everyone who gave you feedback. So you'll be able to see how you stand with the overall average of how people are experiencing you. And then when you invited people to participate, there were 5 categories that you invited. Boss's boss and boss will stand alone. And then the peers, direct reports, and the other, you can see those report out separately. And back to the anonymity question, if we have 3 or more people reporting out in the peer, direct report, or other category, then the numbers will show on this report. If there's less than 3, and you can see in the direct report column on this sample, only 1 direct report responded, and we have NAs in this column to protect the confidentiality and anonymity, but those numbers are included in that overall evaluator average in the second column. And so this is, when you're looking at the detailed report, when you look at the circle chart graphically and you want to go look at more detail, you'll go to your detailed report and dive into each category and subcategory, both in the creative and reactive, to more deeply understand your results. The other piece is that when you're looking at one of the competencies or tendencies, and let's say that you're looking at collaborator and you're not quite sure what that means, the first way to get deeper detail is right across the page from where you're seeing the detailed statistics, in this case on collaborator. We reveal the actual questions from the survey that made up the score on that either competency or dimension. And so in this case, if you're wondering what collaborator means from the previous page, you come to this page and you can read the 3 questions, and it gives you a first glimpse of a more detailed understanding of what we mean by collaborator. Beyond that, if you want more detail, there's also the interpretation manual, and the interpretation manual is set up in the same sequence as the circle chart, and it provides detailed descriptions of every category and competency and tendency as well. And a sample page, in this case it's perfection, and this would be one of the reactive categories down in the controlling dimension, and you can see in the manual It's controlling on the gray tab over on the left, so that's the category you're in. Perfect is the reactive tendency. You can read an overall description of perfect, and then it'll say if you score high on that, here's some descriptors of how you're likely showing up. And it'll just give you a much more detailed picture of what we mean by perfect or collaboration or whichever one you're looking up. Now, the last piece is as you're preparing for your one-on-one session, we really want you to be focusing on 4 different themes as you're looking at your results. The first, you want to capture your initial reactions, any shocks or surprises you got, either when reading your written comments or looking at the data. Just highlight those and make a note of them. Second, we want you to identify key strengths that have been foundational to your success to date and identify and highlight those as well. Third, we're going to be having you focus at the bottom half of the circle and look for what are the highest scoring reactive tendencies that you think might be limiting your effectiveness the most, and identify those and explore those in greater detail. And then identifying, when you look at all of the information from those first 3 questions, if you were to pick 2 creative competencies at the top that you'd really like to grow and further improve upon, we want you to identify 2 of those as well and do a little bit of research and better understanding in the manual what those creative competencies are. The one thing that's really important as you go through this process is that there's a pretty predictable pattern of response. And the first time I went through this profile myself, this pattern of response played out all the way. And the first thing I felt when I got my feedback was shock. And a lot of that was because I had significant gaps between my own self-score and the feedback I was getting from others. Rolling off of that shock, I was kind of pissed. I was pretty angry, mostly because I was caught off guard and I was still dealing with the shock. And it's very natural, if you feel pretty significant shock when you first get the result, to have some anger flow through, is to be expected and not to be concerned about. Let it move through, and inevitably we oftentimes will either reject or try to rationalize our position for what we're seeing. And it's at this point, when you're moving through the shock and the anger and either rejection or rationalization, it's really important you realize right now the results are not a reflection of who you are. They're a snapshot of how you're showing up and the impact it's having on your leadership effectiveness. And those 2 things are very different things, and we'll help you understand that difference more when we do the coaching. And then we move to acceptance. And what's amazing is once you get to a point of acceptance, now all of that initial shock and challenge becomes a catalyst for real growth. And coming into acceptance allows you to really now focus on growth and development opportunities that come out of this and how you can improve your effectiveness as a result of it. Next steps in the process, we're going to be conducting the one-on-one debrief sessions. Your coaches have reached out and are in the process of scheduling those. We're going to identify at least 2 development focus areas for you to focus on based on where we arrive once we've helped you understand your results and debriefed your understanding of those. And then those are going to be taken into your November Wiggly meeting with Craig Atkinson, and he'll be working with you to formulate a development action plan around those 2. Final thoughts I want to share with you is that you'll get out of this what you put into it. And this is a big one, especially on the blind spots. If you don't see it, it'll manage you. If you do see it, you can manage it. And a lot of what we're creating in this process is self-awareness to give you better leverage to lead more effectively. Assume you have the perfect profile for the learning that you came here to get. No matter how challenging it is to see your data, open to it and see what's there to be understood, and it will really become a catalyst for your growth. Let go of the details and trust the pattern. We can get overwhelmed with looking at all the statistics and try to dodge the key point that's being invited for us to notice and the opportunity to grow. And this is a quote from somebody we've worked with, and it's very familiar, at least to me, when I went through the profile the first time, and I've experienced it with many of the people that I've worked with. And it says, I never want to go through another day like that in my life, but it probably saved my career. And in my case, it definitely has done a ton to improve my effectiveness through time. Lastly, I just want to let you know if you have any questions between now and your one-on-one executive coaching session, feel free to reach out to me at any time through the weekend, on the weekdays, whenever. You can email me or call my cell phone, and I'll respond to you as quickly as we can. Me and Tim and Shannon, the other two coaches, we really look forward to supporting you in this process, and we really appreciate the opportunity to work with you.